All right, y'all. Today we're talking about Palworld and how this is the end of media as we know it. And that's not an exaggeration. I'm being dead serious. If you don't know what Palworld is, you probably don't play video games because this has been a huge story. Basically, if you can kind of tell by this thumbnail, this is the game. And it's kind of gotten popular because people are saying it's essentially Pokemon with guns. If you don't know what Pokemon is, you might as well just click off this video because none of this is going to connect with you at all. But yeah, Pokemon, a super popular franchise, obviously, when it comes to video games and media. Palworld is basically ripping them off and then putting guns in the game and saying it's a completely new game. Just as an example, on the left side of the screen, here are some of the pals or the monsters from Palworld. And here are Pokemon, the monsters from Pokemon. You can kind of see that there are definitely some similarities. Some of them look like they're like combinations of like different Pokemon put together. Some of them are just like, we're taking the idea and we're just kind of like remixing it. Some of these are like really blatant, like this one, but it just has like the legs of another one. Some of them are combinations, but like you're getting the idea generally speaking. But the issue is that a lot of people who kind of know how these models are made are saying that the proportions are so similar that there's no way that they made these in Palworld without literally taking the 3D models from Pokemon and editing them. And considering that all the pals are created by one guy, they're basically saying that the only way this is possible is if they used AI to basically take those models and like reinterpret them. And this is a huge deal. And I'm about to talk about why. So first of all, AI art in general, this is something that has been a big controversy even starting a few years ago with visual artists and illustrators. AI art represents the end of creativity. Artists who are in the know have already told us this, and this was a big deal a couple of years ago. People don't talk about it as much now just because we've gotten used to it with things like Midjourney. But this is here to stay because the input versus the output is ideal for capitalism. And kind of talking about the general structure of like why this is the case, let's look at memes, for example. Memes have been the main form of entertainment and marketing online and in social media for years. Basically, if you can make somebody laugh or just have something that's very ridiculous or outrageous, it will cause people to pay attention to it, which will lead to dollars. This is just a screenshot from a song from a few years ago. Kanye West, super controversial now, but he was a pretty serious figure in music. But by this time, he had just been kind of making joke songs, Scoopity Boop, and doing songs with little pop, I don't know. Anyway, he was kind of making these joke videos. The whole idea is basically, it doesn't matter. As long as you can make somebody laugh, people will pay attention. That's kind of the same thing with memes. And this game has kind of popped off as a meme. I mean, look, you have this sort of like Pokemon type figure with like a Gatling gun. It's just ridiculous. So we're kind of seeing how like everything from social media and what we are kind of doing with social media on the ground, as well as technological advances, are combining to affect all media. So let's talk a little bit about how we got here. First, just AI and all AI technology. As that sort of ramps up, things are getting weirder and weirder, and you're able to make things so much faster. Also with remakes, half of the movies we see nowadays coming out, whether they be movies or TV, they're remakes of old shows, remakes of old movies. They're, existing intellectual properties that are made into movies. There's an anime, but then we turn it into live action. Like everything's a remake nowadays. As well, we also have memes, which are basically grassroots remakes, right? Like SpongeBob, was one of the most memed shows. It's like a 25-year-old show, and people take screenshots from it, and then those sort of become their own inside jokes. Maybe they are not as popular in 2024, but definitely a few years ago. And that's just not just for that show, but just any show. Like memes are kind of remakes and remixes in and of themselves, sort of reusing assets. We also have deep fakes, which now this has been happening for years. If you see a video of somebody, you don't know if that's actually them or if it's an AI recreation. And you can kind of tell a little bit, but that technology is getting better and better. And the law can't keep up. The law is supposed to sort of move slowly. Everything in the government is supposed to be slow so that things don't change too quickly. That does not jive with the way technology is advancing at all. So that's going to end up resulting in the death of intellectual property and ownership, because everything's going to be remade, funneled through AI filters and different technologies to kind of just spit out new media that's based on old stuff. Just as an example, here we have the thing from maybe a year or two ago where like you had the presidential candidates arguing about video games. Clearly it wasn't them, but AI voices were so realistic that it sounded like them. That stuff is really funny, but the long-term implications are a little bit scarier. So let's just talk about, going back to Palworld specifically, it's riffing and it's taking from Pokemon, and that's sort of the perfect storm for what's happening now. Pokemon is the most profitable intellectual property in the world. Don't believe me, look it up, it's crazy. But a lot of folks who are fans of the series have been saying it's been stagnant as far as the sort of model that the games come out in. There's been a bit of a quality drop, and it uses a lot of these generic assets where the series doesn't always look like it has a specific goal for how it wants to look. And some people say it's sort of soulless. If you look in the top, it just kind of looks like, okay, we've got some water, we've got some trees. Other than this little Snorlax, maybe the outfit, nothing really screams Pokemon per se. It's just, okay, these are kind of generic assets that we're using to create this world. And so when you have a game that sort of riffs off of it, even if the world looks a little bit barren or soulless, it doesn't matter, because the game that it's riffing off has already kind of gotten to that point. So a little bit more about how video games are kind of the first to fall, but this is not going to be exclusive to video games. So media in general is expected to be too large and complex and delivered too quickly. The reason that video games are kind of the first to fall is because the technological advances that we've seen in the past few decades have affected video games more than anything else, like graphics, frame rates, like the way that the worlds are consistently generated and so quickly, with like memory advances and things like solid state drives. Basically, games are so technologically advanced, but they still take a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of work to make. And that just keeps going on and on and up and up and up as the sort of graphics and everything get more advanced. So ultimately, people who make games are underpaid, and games oftentimes are released in a state where they're unfinished. What this does in turn is it makes the consumers have a lower expectation for polish for a game, because, oh, so many games come out unfinished, and because of the internet, they can just patch it later, so it's fine. This didn't used to be the case, of course, which, if you can see behind the picture of Cyberpunk with the police officer that clearly is not rendered, there's a Metal Gear Solid 2 cover. That sort of model where we're saying, oh, we're going to give you this 15 to maybe 20-hour game. It's going to be single player, no open world. It's going to have a few mechanics that are going to be just really polished. That's kind of gone to the wayside, and now we have a different model now. There's also just ravenous consumerism, because we are always scrolling on social media. We consume everything so quickly. There's streaming sites, there's streaming music. We don't sort of invest as much in the individual things as much as we just tear through as much content as we can. That sort of repeats into this feedback loop. And not only that, but the higher ups at the companies that make these games are also trying to cater to our ravenous consumerism as well. This just creates a feedback loop that isn't sustainable. And so new AI technology and shortcuts, they make stuff that is good enough that will fill this void, that will be able to keep up with this super fast, super consumeristic cycle. And whenever Cyberpunk 3 comes out, I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be completely made by AI. I know that sounds ridiculous now, but in the future, looking back, that won't be so far-fetched. Also, as a note, with like a lot of these companies who make games, a lot of people after the incident in 2020, a lot of people working from home, a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of disconnect on the side of people making games. And there was also a bit of a consumer surplus with people being laid off or people working from home, with like a super spike in video gaming as a hobby. That is still affecting us today. So that kind of goes into the cycle as well, where there's just an overplus of consumerism, and trying to meet that demand just isn't super realistic. Now, back to Palworld specifically. It sold over 7 million copies in just 5 days. This is from a developer that people didn't really know about. This is just a blowout, sort of out of the nowhere, just absolute hit. And it doesn't matter if the people who make Pokemon sue the absolute shit out of the people who make Palworld. Other people are going to look at this model. They're going to look at the AI shortcuts. They're going to look at, how we can rip off something that already exists and tweak it just a little bit. They're going to look at how ridiculous the sort of general premise is, and they're going to use the same model because everybody wants to make money. They want to go viral. And in a world where there's just so much content, everybody's trying to make it on social media or otherwise, people have to figure out a way, and companies have to figure out a way to stand out and make things fast. And this model is going to be used over and over. And in this scenario where there's a potential copyright infringement thing where like everybody just assumes that Pokemon or Game Freak who makes Pokemon is just going to sue, everybody assumes that actually helps because it creates controversy, and also just the similarity to Pokemon gets people to pay attention. And there's also like an easy tagline. You can describe this game in 3 words. Oh, it's Pokemon with guns. Now just imagine all the other intellectual properties that you can kind of remix in this way using AI to make something quick and just shove it out there and see if people buy it, see if it gets traction. This is going to happen a lot, and it's not just going to stop at video games, right? Ultimately, capitalism is based on profits, right? Revenue minus cost equals profits. That one simple equation explains everything that's happening. It's the reason why you're probably not going to be able to afford a house, because companies are trying to make the cost as little as possible, so they're going to pay the people who work for them as little as possible. They're going to make sure the product that they create is as cheap as possible, and they're going to give us as little as possible as the consumers. Meanwhile, they're going to try to make it as expensive as possible, or try to make as much of it as possible to increase their revenue. And AI and like these sort of ripoffs plugs right into this super easily, because AI stealing and ripping off, remixing, whatever, it cuts costs. It also cuts the time to deliver, and it helps to very easily adopt aspects of media that people already like, which we see as prevalent in these remakes, but it does it in a technologically advanced way where it's like hard to tell where the inspiration stops and the new stuff begins. Additionally, the lower cost to deliver allows these companies to like come up with these ridiculous ideas and actually make them feasible, right? If you come up with this super ridiculous idea that you think people are going to latch onto because it's so crazy, due to like how much things cost and how long it takes to actually make things, you might as a company say, oh, this is not worth it, or oh, by the time we put this out, the trend that we're trying to chase is going to be gone. But with stuff like AI that can like cut these corners, all of a sudden these ridiculous ideas become super feasible. And as we were saying before, ridiculous gets people to pay attention, whether it's laughter, outrage, it gets people to pay attention. And as we see in this case, 7 million copies in 5 days, it sells. So we're going to get more ridiculous media, and it's going to be like super shoved out, and it's going to be mostly made by AI. So this model will be repeated, I promise, and it will not stop at video games. Like they were saying in SpongeBob, we're already halfway there. Many YouTube videos are already written with AI scripts, not this one. I'm just coming up with this with my own brain. Also, a lot of YouTube videos already use AI narration voices. This is something I've noticed, especially with self-improvement videos, whether it be looks maxing, spirituality, or whatever. People are using AI to like put out these YouTube videos in mass and just farm views. So this stuff is already happening on the ground level on the YouTube side. But with new technology like realistic AI text prompt to video, like Google Lumiere, which we'll show in a minute, even making videos is going to be based on AI very soon. The technology is already there. This will become more prevalent in mainstream music, TV, and movies. Rogue One is a Star Wars movie. It came out in 2016, so that was 8 years ago. And they used deep fakes to basically bring a dead guy back into the movie and use his likeness for the character, right? And this was happening 8 years ago, right? Morally, that's super weird. Technologically, it's weird as well. And it's been 8 years since that. So we've come such a long way, and we're only going to continue. So you have to wonder, like, what's next? So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is this Palworld situation Palworld is not a video game. It is a prophecy of what is to come. This will change media forever, and based on how much media is affecting our lives, this is going to change the world. This will change the future. This will change how people interact, how people live. So what we're going to get in the future, if we look in the crystal ball based on Palworld, we're going to get more soulless, meaningless, and uncanny media. Just about everything you see and consume is going to be a copy of something else. There are going to be moral dilemmas everywhere based on like who owns what, but there's going to be a lot of funny shit too. So there's that. So that's it for my slides. I'm going to go over and show you a little bit of what I was saying before with Google Lumiere, which is something that has just been released. So yeah, if you go to Google and just type in like Lumiere, I think this is Lumiere, it might be Lumiere. Anyway, it's a new sort of Google text to AI video technology. So all of these videos you see, these are not real videos that somebody actually took with a camera. These are all computer generated via AI. Essentially, all you have to do is type in a word prompt or text prompt, in this case, beer pouring into glass, and it will create a video for you that looks photorealistic, right? This technology exists now. And think about like how much money movies make, like a Star Wars movie that makes like $1 billion plus, $2 billion, whatever. But it also costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make, right? Because you have to go on set, you have to have the actors, you have to make sure all the takes are just right, you have to have all the equipment, right? If you can have a product that is a video that is created just by a computer and all you have to do is type in words, obviously the incentive in capitalism is going to be to go towards that as opposed to making something that's real, that takes time, that takes a lot of money. So I guarantee you in the future, when you're scrolling on social media and you're watching videos, at least half of them, maybe 5 years from now, are going to be AI videos. And whatever streaming service you have for, movies and TV, a lot of that content is going to be created by AI. So this is something that I just wanted people to be prepared for and be aware of. And also, I just thought it was pretty interesting. We are definitely living in sci-fi times. Everything that you read in sci-fi books, I believe, is just a representation of what's going to happen in the future, because you put those ideas out there and then eventually somebody's going to figure out how to make it. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate you for watching and have a great rest of the day. Let's give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, me. I wanted to introduce my new company, Sound Ultra. We're a music house providing custom tracks to you or your organization at a fixed monthly subscription. With Sound Ultra, you can put in unlimited requests, you can cancel your subscription at any time, or you can even pause it so you can use the rest of your days for the month at a later time. There are no contracts involved, so as soon as you get your track, it is all yours to use however you want. All you have to do is sign up and you can start making requests the same day. It's super easy. Whether you need music for your own content, commercials, trailers, games, movies, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, Sound Ultra has got you covered. Check out our site in the description below at soundultra.net and schedule a call with us today. Thanks for your consideration and thanks for watching.